captain, broadcaster, journalist, doesn't get much better than that. Michael Atherton, thanks for joining us. Firstly, you missed out or didn't come in 2005. Your last tour was 2000. How has Pakistan changed over those years?
Well, I haven't been here to Karachi since that time, 22 years, but I have been back since actually, because I came to do a documentary with Imran in about 2015, and then I came back in 2019 to do a documentary about the return of cricket to Pakistan. So unlike Nasser, I have been back a couple of times since having played. But when I came, I felt that the warmth and the welcome was so overwhelming. You know, I was always very touched by it, and I've always enjoyed coming here. And so I've always tried to portray, both in the stuff we've done for Sky and the writing that I do in the Times, I've always tried to tell people that it's a tour you should try and come on. A, because the cricket is good, B, because it's an interesting place, and C, because of the warmth of the welcome that we get.
You almost answered the question I was going to ask. The uniqueness of covering cricket in Pakistan as compared to the rest of the world. You've covered cricket all over the world.
Well, it is unique at the moment in that there's levels of security that you don't necessarily get elsewhere. And that's unfortunate. It's necessary, but unfortunate, because it means that you can't get out as much as you'd like to. But there's still an amount of freedom. You know, just today I was walking around the old polo ground, just 2 blocks down from this hotel, had a wander down to the Gymkhana. So I thoroughly enjoy that. You know, in Multan, it's an absolutely fascinating city. You've got the contrast between ancient architecture, 14th century architecture. We went to the famous burial shrine on one of the mornings, absolutely beautiful. And then the kind of chaos of downtown that, at least to English eyes, you know, seems quite strange. But is very kind of subcontinental, I suppose. So I find the place fascinating, and of course it's always produced great cricketers, partly because of the conditions here. You know, some of the bowlers that have emerged from very flat pitches that cricket is played on here makes it, you know, interesting cricket to watch and cover as well.
I won't mention the caps you wore, but you played against the 2Ws, and then obviously Shoaib Akhtar comes in the Inzi era, and also covered sort of the Misbah era, now Babar. What has changed along that? Has Pakistan still in essence been the same team, or has the style of play changed?
I think in the 90s, which was particularly my era, I thought that was a really top-notch Pakistan team. If you think of some of the players there, Saeed Anwar, Inzamam, Wasim and Waqar, Saqlain, Mushtaq. These are some of the all-time greats in any era. So I felt the quality of that bowling attack. Wasim's team came to England in '96. I was captain of England, he was captain of Pakistan. And it was Wasim, Waqar, Saqlain and Mushi. And that's 4 fantastic bowlers with, you know, somebody else to fill in a few here and there. So I always felt they were a really strong side in the 90s. I wouldn't say the Pakistan side today has the same depth or quality as it had then. And you have to be very careful as an old retired cricketer that you don't look back through rose-tinted spectacles. But I think I'm on firm ground saying that. I'm not an old player who just thinks it was all better in my day. But I do think that Pakistan side of the 90s was a very special side. And I think the one now doesn't quite have that quality or depth.
Let's get to your broadcasting career. When you started off, what was the most difficult thing to do?
Well, as you will know, mostly when you come from playing into broadcasting, you don't get any training really. You're left to sink or swim. So the things that now we take for granted, like having a voice in your ear when you're talking, or making sure you're looking at the camera, not the monitor, the nuts and bolts of the job, which come very quickly, but you have to learn as you go along, those were the initial challenges. And then I was very lucky really. I started working on Channel 4 in England, and there were some fantastic broadcasters working on that. There was Richie Benno, Mark Nicholas, Ian Smith, Tony Gregg, Geoffrey Boycott. These were absolute top-notch broadcasters. So for somebody coming in, the smart thing to do was to sit and listen to these people very carefully. And obviously everybody does it differently, but just try and watch how they operate. And in particular, Richie, who was still at the height of his fame and was still as good a broadcaster as he ever had been at that point, just to watch how he did it was an education, really. So I was very lucky at the start.
So many formats now, obviously T20, you've got the 100, you've got one-day cricket and test match cricket. The ebb and flow of the game, the broadcaster has to capture that. What format would be your favorite in terms of broadcasting?
Well, I like all formats. I mean, I'll draw a line somewhere, maybe it's T10 or 60 balls or whatever, but I like test matches, 50 over cricket and T20. I think they all bring something different. If you said to me, you can have a great T20 match, a great 50 over match and a great test match, I think undeniably the test match offers more scope and variety and an ability for the great players to stamp themselves on the game, and you just have a bit more to talk about. And also because it's a slightly slower pace of game, although not the way that England are playing at the moment, it just allows for the broadcasters to kind of talk in a more relaxed fashion, whereas clearly T20 is about the moment, calling the moment, the sixes, the fours, and you know that's happening all the time, whereas just it's a bit more of a gentle pace, I think, for test cricket. So I'd probably choose that, but as I say, I enjoy all formats.
Yeah, and just on that, with franchise cricket and all T20 cricket altogether, do you feel that there is a threat to bilateral series as a whole?
I think they're becoming more difficult, and I feel for the administrators that it's not easy, because if you everybody's saying there's a bit of overkill, but if you reduce the amount of cricket that your country is playing, then other franchise tournaments will just spring up. So it is not an easy situation. The moment the free market came into the game with the IPL, cricket, it always seemed to me, was going to fundamentally change. That test cricket would be challenged, international cricket would be challenged, and players have choices now in the way that they never had before. When we played, you really made your reputation and you paid your bills by playing test cricket. And of course now players have got all manner of choices. So it's just a very different landscape. I hope that first class cricket and test cricket survives, because I think a game without long form cricket would be a less rich game, but I can see obviously that the spread of the game is going to be driven through T20.
And as a broadcaster, you said there's so much cricket happening, so much sort of matches being played every other day. How does a broadcaster then make sure that the viewer doesn't get fatigued with cricket?
Well, the viewer has a choice of what he wants to watch, I suppose, but the broadcaster or the commentator also has a choice of what he works on. So I think the danger is actually just not spreading yourself too thinly. Pick and choose what you want to work on. Try and enjoy the cricket that you're working on. I think that the biggest thing when you commentate is if you are enjoying the cricket, enjoying watching the cricket yourself, if you are curious about the people playing it, that sense of curiosity and enjoyment will come over to the viewer. The viewer will very quickly pick up if you're bored. If you're really just there to do the job and you're not enjoying it and you're a bit bored, the viewer will pick it up quickly. So my view has always been, I want to work on the cricket that I enjoy, that I'm interested in, that I'm curious about, because I feel that then will come over in my broadcasting.
Is Michael Atherton very well researched and prepared into every game that he's working on?
I'm prepared and researched, yeah. I do the work before the games and before the series. But there's two things. There's one, having that research and that work done, but that doesn't mean you have to use it all the time. I think there is a danger of overkill with statistics and a danger of overkill with information. The viewer wants to feel a bit of emotion and the passion of the game and, you know, the kind of drama of the game. That's really what you try and get over. But you need to have that research done, and it needs to be there, so just you can use it as and when. But I don't think you need to kind of hammer the viewer over the head with stats all the time.
And obviously you write as well, so does that complement your broadcasting, being a commentator, or is it something completely different?
I think it does, each complement the other. So because I write, I tend to go and listen to the captain's press conferences, or I might interview a player for a piece. So all the time you're getting that depth of knowledge, and you're getting to know the players, and you're just finding out little things that you might otherwise not find out. And as regards like the politics of the game and the administration of the game, you have to be across that. And then the broadcasting helps the writing, because when you're broadcasting, as you know, you're watching intently and you're really following the game tightly, and that then helps when you come to write at the end of the day's play. So in fact, they kind of fit together quite well, although there are times when the deadlines become a bit pushed. In the Caribbean, say, when they're 4 hours ahead of England and you're tight on deadline, it can get a bit hairy.
To go back to Test cricket, obviously there's pressure on Test cricket, even though Test cricket is now producing more results than ever before. But do you think that a broadcaster can sort of get the message across, or try and pump up Test cricket, or the governing bodies can do much better?
I think the job of the broadcaster is to call the game accurately and as you see it. What I'm trying to say is, if there's a terrible pitch in front of you or a terrible game, I don't think you can just become a salesman, because again, people will see through that pretty quickly. The viewers are not fools. If there's a really bad pitch and you're trying to sell it as a really good pitch, they're going to see through that. And then you lose your credibility. So I think you have to stay honest, and you have to stay true, and you have to tell it as it is, or as you see it. But clearly, if you've got a great test match, then, build it up as much as you want, yeah.
In terms of people that you work with, I know it's very, very difficult to answer, but the best couple couple of commentators that you work with, current company excluded, but otherwise, who would you think is one of the best, or the best that you'd like to work with?
Well, first of all, I have enjoyed the general nature of the commentary colleagues that I've worked with, people from different countries. It's great to get to know people that you played against but maybe didn't know that well, and you get those different perspectives. Somebody like Ian Smith, to my mind, is a consummate broadcaster. He's got a wonderful way with words. He's got a nice sense of humour. You have to remember that the game is a game, and you can't take it too seriously. You have to be able to laugh at yourself, and you have to be able to find humour in situations. But come the killer moments, the dramatic moments, and the World Cup final of 2019 would be a great example of that. He would capture that drama and emotion perfectly. So he's one. There's many others that I've worked with that I've enjoyed working with along the way. Bumble at home and NASA here, and all you guys, lots of them. But I think Ian Smith over the last few years has proved himself to be a tremendous broadcaster.
Right, coming back to the cricket, baseball, is that here to stay? Or do you see other countries adopting it?
It's here to stay with Brendan McCullum and Ben Stokes, absolutely. They see England's great strength as these attacking young batsmen, and they're going to give them free go. Whether other teams will copy, I don't know. The art of captaincy is really to work out what resources you have and try and make the most of those resources. Now, if you don't have batsmen who can play in that fashion, you may not be able to copy it, and it may be foolish to copy it. So I think it's about working out what you have, what your strengths are, and play to those accordingly.
Right, the series victory for England, how big is that? We from over here think that it's all about the Ashes. Even when we're playing in the UAE, when Australia came and they lost to Pakistan, we thought that it's not really about this series, it's more about the Ashes. Is it the same with England? This series victory for England, How big is that?
I think it is a big series. First of all, it's a historic series, England coming here for the first time in 17 years. I know everybody was looking forward to coming, and many people within the media were very upset when England didn't come last year. And the players have embraced it, I think. They've really enjoyed it. They've played good cricket. Obviously, they've won the series. English cricket always has half an eye on the Ashes. That's just how it is historically. It is the biggest series. It comes around every 2 years. It's the biggest series as far as an English player is concerned. But that doesn't mean that the other series are irrelevant or they don't care about them. They do. It's just that they always have half an eye on Australia.
Right, the last question. Apart from the series, the biggest takeaway from you being here in Pakistan throughout this tour?
Really what I've said before when I've been here recently, that it's safe to come, that it's a great place to come, that the cricket is interesting, that the people are exceptionally warm and welcoming, and therefore any chance to come is a chance to be taken. I would come back at the drop of a hat to watch cricket here. I thoroughly enjoy coming.
Thank you, Michael. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.